Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. At the end of last week, I said I wanted to read more books for actual adults, and by God, did I find one, and I fear I may never emotionally recover. Some books are emotional roller coasters, and others are a constant downward spiral, leaving you feeling like you've been carved open at the end. Nightcrawling by Layla Motley is the latter, and that's what we're going to talk about today, so let's get into it. I want to start by saying that if you're a take a day out, read a whole book kind of person, maybe don't with this one. To be clear, I think this book is phenomenal, but I read it in only a couple of sittings, and I think I should have done more bite-size sessions. This book is emotionally taxing, and reading so much at once did not feel good. I had to take a lot of breaks and just sort of sit there feeling heavy and kind of empty all at the same time. This is a small doses type of book, I would say, and mostly because it means you actually get to savour the richness of the writing style without being utterly wiped out by the contents, because this is kind of relentless. It's not a happy book by any means, and there's nothing wrong with a book being emotionally tolling, obviously. I don't think you need me to say that, but reading this in smaller doses, I think, just is the best move with it, because it means that you can enjoy the writing itself and not feel like you're being just wiped out. This book follows 17-year-old Kira living with her older brother Marcus in a pretty run-down apartment block in Oakland, California. They're in debt with rent as it is, and the price is being upped, and there's a 9-year-old little boy next door that needs someone to look after him because his mother is in no fit state. Her brother won't work a real job, convinced he can make it in the music industry despite a complete lack of talent, and Kira has nothing to put on her resume. She's a high school dropout, and the jobs she has had haven't been long enough to really qualify any kind of sort of recommendation. I can't think of the word off the top of my head, and that's going to annoy me now. What is the word? Anyway, one thing leads to another, and despite her young age, Kira has to resort to escorting on the streets. And yes, that is as difficult to read as you would expect, but it is handled well. It's handled very well. The scenes are not explicit in terms of... they don't make it smutty, and she so easily could have done that, and thankfully she doesn't. It's very matter of fact and emotionally tolling, but at no point does it feel like she's intentionally degrading her character. Rather, the characters within the book are making her degraded, if that makes sense. But Kira ends up embroiled in a police scandal because of this, and maybe it feels like she can find a way out of this life, but at every turn it would seem that things just aren't set up that way. Motley balances the hauntingly real with the incredibly poetic, and she does so well. The narrative voice and the story being told are so human, so lifelike, and she intersperses that with incredibly poetic language, often in the form of little turns of phrase that are just so striking despite their simplicity. Kira is our narrator, and her voice is so clear throughout. This is written in a more sort of colloquial style, and it works really well. It's clear that this is a kind of voice that Motley is familiar with. I believe she's an Oakland girl herself, so that makes sense. I love seeing a strong narrative voice come through like this without it being overbearing. I'll get to it in a minute, but this book is so grounded, and the way that Kira's voice comes through in the narration is a huge part of that. As for the more poetic side of things, in a moment where Kira is being comforted by Marcus, she says that he's speaking sun into me. And oh my god, Lord, is that a gorgeous turn of phrase. It's life, it's warmth, it's light in the darkness, and sometimes the poetry isn't even quite so flowery. Things constantly feel like they're on a downward turn for her, and she's always trying to find something to give her hope, and remarks, I might be able to get out of this mess with all of us intact enough to love right, which was one of many lines that had me slumping back in my chair, deep sigh, and just rolling that around in my head. She has not had the experience of someone loving her in a way that feels whole and just right. Barring her friend, and even still there are issues there, and she does not know how to relay love to others in a way that also feels right. It's one of the more heartbreaking aspects of this story. Through everything, she is trying to love those around her, even when that isn't always reciprocated, at least not in a way that feels healthy. She was never given a stable foundation, so at 17 she is scrambling to find a way to build one. So the thing is, this is one of those books where nothing seems to go right, but remains an incredibly captivating narrative, and a huge amount of that is because it is achingly normal. This is a story of people just trying to survive in a world that is not designed for them. Kira is a young, poor black girl just trying to find a way to live, and then she ends up caught up with cops. How the hell is she supposed to stand a chance? This really does just feel like we're alongside her, documentary style, watching a girl go through hell, unable to reach out a hand and help, knowing that nobody else is really going to be able to do that for her as well. This is not a book with hope or happy endings, but it is one that echoes so much of what we see in our day-to-day, in the news cycle. These are human beings that you could pass on the street. Like, miscommunication or not communicating at all is something that's hard to get right in writing. It's something that's inherently frustrating for a reader. You are a watcher unable to interact, and you just have to sit there knowing that if they just stopped for a second and talked properly, then things might be better, if not fixed altogether. And this is something that Motley uses so well. These are not people ever given the tools to communicate properly with one another. People talk without thinking, and they take low blows just to let feelings out. All things that are guttural and so normal. And here's the thing. It is just as frustrating here as it is elsewhere. But here it's clear that even if these people communicated better, the overall situation would not be solved, just the interpersonal one in the moment. Much of the reason it's infuriating in a lot of places is because it would cause the entire plot to be sorted out if people just stopped for a second and had an actual conversation. But here it's far more like it is in our everyday lives. Open and honest conversation can ease pain, and it is necessary to make our lives easier, but it cannot always solve our wider issues, the sort of societal level ones. At the end of the day, rent is still due, and talking properly with one another isn't going to fix that. When I finished this book, I was left feeling much the same way I did when I finished Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. When I finished that, I needed to just sit down and digest what I just read through. In both cases, they were something that sat heavy in my chest, and likely will do so whenever I stop to think about them in the future. This was an absolutely incredible debut, and I will likely seek out her later novels. I think she's released one either late last year, early this year when I was looking her up. But I do need a break before coming back to her, because the plot synopsis I saw of her latest novel was equally as heavy as this one. So I need a break from something like that. I cannot constantly read stuff that is this emotionally taxing. So, with that in mind, down in the comments, drop me some light relief, or maybe let me know what books had you needing a moment to just sit there and stare into the middle distance for a while. Next week I am onto something lighter, though who knows where my emotions will go with it. At the very least, it's something a little more fantastical, so, you know, that's always fun. To find out what next review is going to be on, though, you've got to feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to ring that notification bell. All the cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do in my videos, but most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right,